Have you wondered how we find the length all the way around a circle? In other words, if we have a circle like this, how do we find the length going all the way around? That's such a curved length. That length is called the circumference. So this video is going to be about finding the circumference of a circle. Now, circum means like circle, and ference is shortened for round, so circumference actually means going round the circle. Here's how they do it. First, to find a circumference, you need to know the radius or the diameter. Let's take the diameter of this circle. The diameter is the length going from one edge to the other edge through the center of the circle. Let's draw the center here. Out of curiosity, how many times would that red diameter fit around that yellow circle? Let's look. Here's the first time, okay? It's a piece of string. We're stretching it around that circumference. I reckon it would fit to around here, and then it would stop. Let's do another one. Let's see. There's the diameter again, and it would fit round to about here, I'd say, something like that. And then another diameter would go round to perhaps about here. So it's 3 times. The diameter would fit round 3 times and a bit more. And what mathematicians did is they invented a symbol for the number of times that a diameter fits around the edge of a circle. That symbol is quite famous, and it's called pi, named after the Greek letter P, and many different Greek letters are used in mathematics. What that pi represents is the exact number of times that a diameter would fit around the circumference, and the number itself actually goes on forever because it's a decimal, but what it looks like is 3.141592, carrying on. That's rounded to 6 decimal places, but it would carry on forever actually. So roughly you can see it's 3 times with a bit left over. But from that amazing discovery, we now have what we wanted, which is a formula for finding the circumference of a circle. This is what mathematicians dreamed of for centuries before they found it. The formula would be, therefore, pi times the length of the diameter will give you the circumference. I'll just call it circum for short. So the formula is pi times the diameter. Because that's so mind-blowing, I'm just going to highlight that. And what colour should we do? We'll keep that blue, and we'll fill it in with an orange. There we go. Pi times the diameter equals the circumference. Really important one to remember. In this case, if we had a diameter of 5 centimeters, so that whole length here equals 5 centimeters, what would be the circumference? We'd need a calculator, and we'd do pi, which is this button here, you can see. It should be on all calculators, times by that 5, because that's the diameter, gives us 15.7. So that has a circumference of 15.7 centimeters. Let's do another circle. This time, I'm not going to give you the diameter, but I am going to give you the radius. Here is the radius. The radius, as you remember, goes from the center to the edge of the circle. That's the radius, and the radius in this circle is going to be 2 centimeters. How would we find the diameter if we know the radius? Well, this is something else that's always true of circles and very important to remember. The diameter always equals 2 times the radius. In other words, the diameter is always twice as big as the radius. That's so important, I'm going to actually go crazy and highlight that as well. There we are, and fill it in with red perhaps. Diameter is always double the radius. In this case, we have a radius of 2 centimeters, so what's the diameter? Correct, the diameter would be 4 centimeters in total. So the radius was the 2 centimeters, and the diameter was the whole length across, 4 centimeters. And the circumference? Well, the circumference is pi times the diameter, which would be pi times 4, not the 2, because that's the radius, but pi times the whole diameter, so 12.57, rounding it off. Well, let's call it 12.6 centimeters. So in this circle, the circumference is 12.6 centimeters. Let's do one last example, but this is going to be slightly more interesting. What about a semicircle? Half of a circle with a diameter going across. How would we find the perimeter of that? So the question is, what is the perimeter, which is all the way around? First, you need to imagine like we have a whole circle. So if I imagine that the whole circle carries on like that, how would we find the circumference? Well, we'd need the diameter, so the question would give you the diameter. In this case, let's say the diameter is 6 centimeters. How would you find the whole circumference? Well, you'd find the whole circumference using our formula in the top right, our magic, really important formula. Pi times the diameter is the circumference. In this question, the whole circumference, if there was a whole circle, I know there's not, but if there was a whole circle, the circumference would be 6 times by pi. If that's the circumference, the outside round bit of the whole circle, what about the outside round bit of just the semicircle? And semi means half a circle. Yep, you would half it. So the round bit here, let's do it in red, is 9.4 centimeters. Oops, let's do it in red. That's 9.4 centimeters. Does that mean I've got the perimeter of 9.4? Not quite, because remember, perimeter means all the way around. So we've got to add that 9.4 to the diameter here to get all the way around the semicircle and find its perimeter. 9.4 plus 6 is indeed 15.4. So using the power and magic almost of the circumference of a circle and that powerful symbol of pi, we've found the perimeter of a semicircle.